America's News Now, and a big vote today on the Hill for House Republicans. They do plan to remove Congresswoman Liz Cheney from her leadership role in the House and replace her possibly with Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. And joining us right now to break it all down is the Director of Political Science at Cedarville University, Dr. Mark Caleb Smith. Dr. Smith, welcome back to the National Desk. Good morning.
Good to be with you.
On Monday, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy did release a letter addressing this vote, and he said this is no time to take our eye off the ball. If we are to succeed in stopping the radical Democrat agenda from destroying our country, these internal conflicts need to be resolved so as to not distract from the efforts of our collective team. Having heard from so many of you in recent days, it's clear that we need to make a change. Dr. Smith, it does seem like it's a long time coming. What's your thoughts, though, on Congresswoman Elise Stefanik? Does she represent the voice of the GOP?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting transition potentially within the Republican Party. To understand it, I think you need to see things somewhat from Kevin McCarthy's perspective. He's the House Minority Leader right now. He desperately wants to be Speaker of the House. For that to happen, the Republicans are going to have to take back control of the House in 2022. And I think for him, in his mind, that's only going to happen if they have the strong support of Donald Trump. Anything that threatens that support, anything that threatens the unity of the House Republicans, in his mind, is really a threat to that goal. Liz Cheney, on the other hand, she has a different set of goals in mind. You know, she sees January 6th as a defining event, and the Republicans can either move toward that event and toward Donald Trump, or move away from it and away from Donald Trump. And so you have two really different visions of the future of the Republican Party, and to some extent, they're going to play out today in this particular vote.
Well, back in 2018, then House Speaker Paul Ryan had this to say about Representative Elise Stefanik. Let's take a listen.
How do we attract more women? We asked Elise to do recruitment for us. This is the future of the Republican Party, the future of our country. People like Elise.
Right.
So if she does assume that role, will this be a turning point for the party?
I think that it very well could be. I mean, I think there's a temptation to read too much into these kinds of decisions, but this could be a big moment. We're really looking at a strong ideological difference at work here. Liz Cheney is demonstrably more conservative historically than Elise Stefanik, and so you're seeing a difference break forward there. Also, we're looking at a difference in loyalty to President Trump. Elise Stefanik made her national reputation in defense of the president throughout his impeachment proceedings. Liz Cheney obviously voted to remove the president, impeach the president, and has been an outspoken critic. And so how loyal would the Republican Party be to Donald Trump moving forward? In these two women, you see very different approaches to that test.
Because you just said it. You said Cheney was more conservative in her voting than Stefanik, right? So the key factor here is who supports Trump moving forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I really think that that's the defining difference right now. But it isn't just about Donald Trump. It's also about the future for the control of the Republican Party. Liz Cheney would probably like to be Speaker of the House as well. She would like to assume a larger role in the future of the GOP. She sees that Donald Trump and his role in the party is going to be a conflict with that. And so she would like to move the party in a different approach. Now, I think she also has some legitimate criticisms of what happened on January 6th. I don't want to minimize those. But what we're looking at now is the beginning of a long struggle, I think, for control of the GOP.
Well, we know Congresswoman Cheney is likely to lose her leadership role as the chair of the conference. Will we see the same thing, though, play out in the 2022 election? Do you think she's going to lose her seat in Wyoming?
It's certainly possible. And many, many Republican politicians are going to be watching this very closely to see what will happen with her in 2022. But a couple of things to keep in mind. I think we can sometimes read too much into these kinds of events. You know, people like me, we're on Twitter, we're on social media. We follow every change slavishly almost. That isn't true for most voters. They have lives to live, they have jobs, they have families to take care of. They're not following the ins and outs of every leadership discussion in Washington, D.C. Still, we have to be honest, certain moments are going to stick in their minds. Voting to impeach a president within your own party, continuing to resist a very popular former president within your own party, that kind of thing will stick with voters, I think. And so how much, we're going to see over the next 18 months how much of a role that will play in November 2022.
Well, certainly being removed from a leadership role from your own party, probably also making headlines, and will stick with voters as well. All right, Dr. Mark Caleb Smith, thanks for joining us here this morning on the National Desk.
Thank you.